Well, it's been a while, so let me say welcome back, Warriors, to another episode of what is now the Warrior 3 podcast. I'm Bruce Hooley, and it is a blessing to have you guys on the podcast today. And yes, we have a very special treat in store for you once again. Our mission, of course, is to empower and equip men to live, lead, and love strong. And if you guys would like to get stronger in those areas, go to warrior3project.com and subscribe. You'll get access to an awesome community of men, free content, and you'll be the first to know about upcoming events, resources, and so much more. Got a quick question for you. Do you feel strong in your physical, spiritual, and relational health? If you said no to any of these three categories, well, you're not alone. And whether you're getting a little soft in the midsection, struggling to build deep, intimate relationships with God or others around you, maybe your spouse, your kids, you just don't want to be average or okay. You want to be exceptional. Then the Warrior 40 Challenge is for you. Remember, before Jesus started his ministry, he intentionally put himself through struggle in order to get prepped and prepared for the battle ahead. 40 days in the wilderness. And men, we sometimes feel like we're in that wilderness, do we not? It's true. We are in a battle for our health, our faith, and our relationships. So it is time to get stronger. For more information on how to take the Warrior 40 Challenge, visit warrior3project.com. That's warrior3project.com for details. Okay, I promised you a very special guest. Today, we're doubling up. Dr. Ryan and his amazing wife, Ashley, live in Westchester, Ohio with their three beautiful children. And not only are they active in their church, but they also own and operate Align Chiropractic. It's one of the largest and most influential chiropractic offices in the country. If you're in the Cincinnati area, go to alignhealthcenter.com for more information. Here is Dr. Brandon Schreiner, and we certainly hope this episode blesses you all.
All right, Warriors, today we got a special podcast, Dr. Ryan Berlin and his amazing wife, Ashley. Welcome to the show, guys.
Well, hey, thanks for having us.
You guys are
good to be here, Brett.
Such a blessing. You guys have been, well, I've known you guys for quite some time, and you guys have been solid in many ways. Your faith and commitment to the truth is unwavering, and especially in these times. You know, we need men and women of courage and character to step up and put a sword to the fight. And as I was talking to my wife, Sam, who are we going to have in the podcast this year? You guys came up, and honestly, there are a lot of people out there that are talking, flexing their muscles on social, but when the crap hits the fan, I'm not sure I would see the same demeanor. And I honestly believe that you two would die for your principles and values, whether it be in your clinic, chiropractically, or just the values that you guys build your family on. And that's men and women that I'll invite to fight alongside me. And so I want to thank you for being a part of the podcast. It means a lot.
Thank
So
you,
good.
Brandon. We appreciate that.
Yeah, so I want to start off. I got a series of questions, and when we do podcasts like this, Ashley, this is the first podcast for Warrior 3 that we've ever had, a wife on. So I'm super excited to kind of get some dialogue going. But I want to dive into it. This is a quote by
What?
Yeah.
I love it. It's so good.
Yeah,
Wow,
you're the first. You should.
I get to be here. I love that. And you know what? I didn't want to interrupt you at all, but I love that, like, Sam, your wife is absolutely phenomenal. And I've said this multiple times before, and I feel like it needs to be like reiterated so much. Like, I have watched her work out a number of times now, and I'm like, holy smokes. Like, I owned a gym for 8 years, and I watched her work out, and I'm like, come on, sister. Like, she is so good and so intense, and like the level that she brings into things is like really phenomenal. Like, I have so much admiration for Sam.
Yeah,
she's really phenomenal.
She works so hard, and she works so hard, and she looks at those individuals who like have no body fat and like don't really do a whole lot, and she's just working her tail off. And I think that that's she's awesome, and I love she loves you, and I'll tell you, my wife is can really sniff through bull crap, and so if she values a relationship and values somebody, I know they're for real. So she loves spending time with you at the cabin for sure. So.
Oh, I love her.
Yeah. So, so Howard Thurman, I love this quote. It says, "Don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive, and then go do that, because what the world needs as people who have come alive. And so, the first question I want to ask, as we, kind of dive into this, the whole vision and the mission behind Warrior 3 is, empowering men to live, lead, and love strong. Living strong, meaning, your fitness and just how it is that you carry your physical temple. Leading strong, like your relationship with Jesus and just how that kind of trickles down into your family. And then your relationships, just how you, treat your husband, how you treat your wife, how you, lead your children. And so, I personally have seen men that are struggling just to survive, let alone come alive. You seem like individuals just like super passionate about what you do. And I look at you guys and it's like you guys are alive in what you do. I guess my question is, how do you keep the flame burning hot? Because when you're on a mission like we're on in the chiropractic world, it's kind of like, we're kind of like the redheaded stepchilds of the medical community, and we're the greatest profession known to mankind. We're following after Jesus. We're trying to raise our kids in a crazy, crazy world. And we're swimming upstream. Like, how do you guys keep that flame burning hot? How are you so alive?
Oh, that's so good. Are we tossing this one over to me?
Yeah, you guys can chat. This is rapid fire back and forth. I don't care.
Well, I'll say this, Ash, real quick. I'll say this. A big part of the reason I do what I do is for my family. So I want to hear Ashley's answer to this, and then I can just kind of piggyback it.
What's funny is that, like, for some reason, the first thing that comes to me when you say that is like, and this is an odd angle to come from, because like I'm an internal optimist, so like you could tell me anything and I'm like, well, here's what's good about it. And it's like, hey, could you just like sit in the sadness for a minute, but like my initial jump on that, it's like, what keeps you alive? My initial jump is like, when I see the things that feel like death to me, I stay the heck away from it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like there's times like when you, like initially, like when you hang out with people and it's like the way that they speak about their spouse and you're like, oh man, why would you say that about them? Like that feels like death to me. And I'm like, dude, I got to do the opposite of that, like, and so for me, like staying alive is like staying close to the flame, staying close to the source. And like, I mean, how many layers deep can you go with staying close to the source, right? Like, it's like, it's God, it's your family. It's like, it's keeping that view, that like 30,000 foot view. That's like, what are the things that are so important to me? It's, God's in everything, my husband, my family, my kids, my marriage, like those are the most significant things. And then you get to layer like the really beautiful stuff on top of that, like what we do for our profession. I mean, Ryan talks about this all the time, and I don't want to steal your sound bites, babe, but like the fact that like what we get to do is so intrinsically valuable and gives us so much. Like we do, but we don't even have to go volunteer on the weekends. You know what I'm saying? Because what we do is so like life-giving and is so service oriented. Like it's such a beautiful thing. So I don't know, like staying close to all those things and not anything that feels like death, like staying away from it.
Yeah, I always tell my kids, we get to do this. We don't have to do this. We get to be able to serve people. We get to be able to, Daddy's, before I go to work, I feel like every single morning my kids are up early and they're like, Daddy, do you have to go to work today? And I say, you understand. I mean, your kids are like, Dad, do you have to go to work? Can you stay home with me? Can we play? And I'm like, Daddy gets to go to work today. Because we serve a big God, and God needs Daddy's sword in the fight. So that's good.
That is good, Ash. I really love that. I think for me, and I talked about this one time with Max Living, was it's what the things that you're most passionate about are the things that you would probably lay down your life for. Your family, your wife, your children. Honestly, chiropractic, freedom. For my kids to be able to be raised without having to be under that medical model and have forced medical care on them. There are certain things that I'm really, 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 really passionate about. And I think those things keep the flame going. They're the things that really matter. Like nobody's given up their life over golf. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I know the Masters is on this week and some people might be giving up their work week for golf, but nobody's like going to lay down their life for golf. For me, the other thing, and you said we get to do this, I really believe we've been called to do this. So anything that you're called to do, I think that if you really believe that God called you to do something, whether it's be a mother, be a father, he called you to be, a chiropractor, he called you to, to speak life into people, then there's a different level of responsibility and a different level of honor that comes with that too. I think back to like warriors and knights, and like certain positions came with a level of authority, a level of responsibility, but a level also of respect and honor. And I think that's what keeps me going, is that I've been called to do something, and so I have to really treat it with the adequate amount of respect and honor.
It's so good. I was just, late last night, we put the kids to bed, and Sam and I are just sitting down and just kind of talking about like Warrior 3 and the practice and just kind of all the things that, God's got going on in our life. And, I think sometimes that, when you're alive in something and you know that you're called to it, I think there's a misconception that if I'm alive and I'm called to it, that everything is going to be comfortable and it's going to be easy. I would actually say that if you're called and you're alive in something, then it doesn't necessarily mean that the road's going to be easy. It's actually going to be tough. And Sam was, just asking me, she goes, why are we doing this? Like, why are you doing, Warrior 3? Like, we don't have to do this. Number one, we get to do this. And I kind of went back to what you were saying, like I do, this for my kids. I mean, I'm kind of trying to leave a legacy for my kids. I'm trying to raise them under a principle that God doesn't create junk. We're all beautifully and wonderfully created. We don't need this outside in stuff to make us healthy. And I said, I'm doing Warrior 3 as almost like a template of how to be a man for my boys. Like when I go and, I go to be with the Lord, like I want my boys to have somewhat of a path to follow, something that they can go to, almost like a workbook, something that they can look at that, obviously alongside the Bible, that will give them the tools necessary to be strong in these areas. And so, I love that, that it's not about me. It's about my family. It's about my wife. It's about my husband. It's about, the principle. The moment that it becomes about you is the moment that you begin to struggle and you don't become alive. And then you kind of jump to sideways energy. You jump to this or that, or, hey, how can I make money over here? Or how can I do this because I just want to be comfortable? Super good. Super good. I want to talk about your guys' faith. I love you guys for multiple reasons, but you guys' faith, and, Sam and I talk about this a lot. Like, you guys challenge us, and, as iron sharpens iron, I consider you guys iron when it comes to a lot of things. But, faith, who, I mean, has it always been like that for you guys? Like, have you always, I know Ashley, I believe your dad's a pastor. I mean, have you guys like always grown up like, I didn't grow up with, a family that was, just on fire for Jesus. Like, we went to church. I mean, my dad was Catholic. My mom was Southern Baptist. They were divorced when I was 4. My brother was 2. And so I spent time in the Catholic church, like, sitting in the middle when everybody else went up to get, communion. And I was kind of like the redheaded stepchild. And then I went, the next weekend I'd go to the Southern Baptist church, or like, throwing cloths on people. I was really confused as a kid, so I really didn't understand, what was going on. So, like, have you guys? Yeah, I mean, it was kind of nuts, and so I've had to kind of, seek after, other, men and spiritual giants to help kind of guide me through, what does this thing look like? But have you guys, like, has there been somebody in your guys' life individually or together that you guys have like, kind of leaned on, or have you guys always had this strong spiritual upbringing, or have you guys had to, have there been bumps in the road? Like, talk about that a little bit.
Ash, you go ahead, get started with that one.
Oh, well, okay. So when you were talking about that Catholic service, Brandon, it's so funny to me because when I think about, I went to a Catholic mass with my grandmother was Catholic, and I mean, like, super devout. Like, she had like statues everywhere, like in her car and like all over the place. And I went to a Catholic service with her when I was little, and I remember feeling like everybody was in a play and like I didn't know the lines to it, because it was like they all knew what to say and they all knew when to stand and sit, and like and so I remember like being in that service, and I actually think that there's something really cool about tradition though, and so I don't hear me poo-pooing like the Catholic mass. I think there's some really cool things that you can do inside that, but I think for me, like, I grew up, my dad was always the spiritual leader of our household. He's a wonderful man. He's still a very wonderful, devout Christian man. My mom's wonderful too. But I would say that, like, I think that figuring out your own, like, for me, it's always figuring out your own relationship with the Lord and figuring out like that path and like what it's going to look like. And for me, it started out very young, and and realizing that there's growth and opportunity in everything, right? So like, there are a number of people that are very familiar with the church that I grew up inside of. It was, it's a Sabbath keeping church. They kept the holy days and didn't do Christmas, didn't do Easter. And some people felt it was a litigious place environment. And for me, because my dad was a pastor, like he didn't pastor like that, so I never felt that. But there was definitely a very, very early on, lots of rules and lots of, laws and lots of Old Testament, and which honestly, there's a benefit to diving deep into that and like figuring those things out and like learning about those days and learning about some of the just like things that God wants us to remember, right? Like we just are coming out of this Passover season and those commands where he's like, do this in remembrance of me, because honestly, you forget things so easily. And it's like, man, that was once, you talk about the fire in your heart. There's once that was something I was so on fire for. And then just over the years, not engaging in it anymore. Now it's barely a flicker, in my memory. And so I think like there was some really cool things there to take from it. And I think one of the beautiful things when I met Ryan, like I met him and I met him with another young lady who was like a little sister to me, and she had met his brother, and the four of us, we sat in a hotel lobby talking till 4:00 in the morning. And one of the really beautiful things about Ryan was like his spirituality, like how he was able to balance this deep, deep relationship to God, but also being a real person. Do you know what it feels like when you meet somebody and they have this, they're like very, very spiritual, but you're like, I don't feel like you're on planet Earth.
Yeah. You're unrelatable. Yeah.
You're completely unrelatable. I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, I could never achieve that. I can never do that. I don't feel like my life could ever look like that. I don't understand how you even accomplish. Like I have felt all those feelings before around people that are very deeply spiritual or very connected to the Lord, very connected to God, very connected to Jesus. And I felt none of those things with Ryan. And I was like, how are you doing this? I almost felt like it was I was like, well, I don't understand. Is this real? Like, is this like a magic trick, or is this really how you operate? And as I came to continue this relationship with him and grow, and oh my gosh, it was very real. It was incredibly real. And I loved it. And I was like, I need more of this. I want to learn how to do this. And I feel like we've had this like into my adult years, it's been this journey of like, we didn't talk about Jesus a lot when I was growing up. And now I'm in this journey, and don't get me wrong, believe Jesus was our Lord and Savior, but a lot of the talk was about God. And then now into my adulthood, it's developing this relationship with Jesus. And like, what does that look like? What does that walk look like? Who is he? Yeah. Like, and I know like we have to go through Jesus to get to the Father, right? So what does that look like? And what is it? And I mean, it's been really like, I wouldn't change a single thing about it, because I understand, like I get the rules part of it. And now I get to live in a relationship, and like, that's amazing. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, that's so good. I'm glad you brought that up, Ash. I mean, that's exactly when this question came up. That's exactly what I was thinking, is that, Brandon, our our relationship together with God and with Christ has been a journey going from pretty Old Testament, pretty litigious, like Ashley said. We still, like today, we're observing the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread today, Passover just the other day. So we still really hold dear to us a lot of the roots of how we were both brought up. And we were both brought up this way, not even knowing each other until roughly a year before we got married. So we had very similar backgrounds, but very different pathways even there. My dad actually got kicked out of 3 separate churches just because he was always challenging his own faith and challenging what he believed. And unfortunately, that was mistaken as him challenging authority. And so he got kicked out of 3 churches of the type that Ashley's dad was pastoring at the same time. So here my dad was like the one stirring it up, and her dad was too in his own way. He actually, as a pastor, was a very strong leader. And when things weren't right, he was always willing to stand for what was right. And he made some waves within that same church organization. But when we met each other, I would say that we both came from a very similar background of this idea that Christ came that we may know the Father, that Christ said, nothing I do, I do only what God tells him to do. And that if you've seen him, you've seen the Father. And so the Father was our focus. But I think over time, we've had to learn to develop this relationship with Christ and walking with Jesus on a daily basis. And then, don't even get me started with the whole idea of like the reality and of experiencing the Holy Spirit. That's something that just in the last year or two, Ashley and I have really, as a couple, started to welcome and really try to nurture, is this idea of actually that the friend that he gave us, the one that he gave us to be with us until he returns, that closeness with the Holy Spirit. So I think she hit the nail on the head. It's just been a walk and a journey, and I think we challenge each other in that. And from the moment we met, my biggest thing was I never thought I would meet someone who had similar values. And so I would just say to my own kids that God's got more in store for you than you know. And when you're willing to compromise, especially with your life partner, and I just never was, then, if you're willing to compromise, you might be shutting the door on the thing he actually has planned for you. And I was just really blessed to have never had that door shut before I met Ashley.
No, I love that. I talk to a lot of men and a lot of guys, that listen to the podcast. Some of them are just kind of new in their faith, and some are, been walking with Christ for quite some time. And I love the balance that you guys bring to that. It gives hope. Anytime I'm around you guys, like, I'm a perfectionist. I mean, you guys know me. I'm either 100% or I'm nothing kind of concept. And so sometimes when I'm around you guys, it's just like a weight lifts off my shoulders, because I don't feel like I have to be, super perfect. But you're also the couple that would say, hey, that's not right. Like, so it's important to have, rules, and there's, like tradition, because they're kind of like the rumble strips to make sure that we don't get off track. But there's also this beautiful balance in between the lines, that like there's freedom there, but then the world we're living in today sometimes takes it all the way over to the other side and said, well, just be kind, like just love everybody. And it's like a kind of a softer message. And, I think as a warrior, as a strong, man and woman in Christ, it's about, staying in the middle, knowing that there is right, there is wrong, and loving somebody strong oftentimes mean that I'm going to tell them what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. All around, like wrapping my arms around them and just showing them the love of Christ. So I love that about you guys. And honestly, like I said, a weight, is lifted off my shoulders a lot of times. It's like, wow, like, I don't have to be so perfect. Like, I can just be who I am. I can just be Brandon, around the Berlins. And I love that about you guys.
Oh my gosh, Brandon, we love you. It's so good. I mean, and I think that non-judgmentalness, honestly, that you're getting, I mean, that's 100%. I mean, I don't think I'm judgmental either, but that's 100% Ryan's like spirit, is that like, man, I've never seen anybody that can be friends with so many people, and like, and they're all wild. I mean, not all of them are wild, but like all very different, like things that they're going through and have encountered in life. And like, it's just the spirit of like, man, God's walking them through something, like, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's just such an interesting perspective that he has.
No, and Ryan, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but I think it's a perfect time to kind of maybe transition into a little bit. But Ryan mentioned to me, we need strong gentlemen. And that kind of phrase has, kind of been adopted into what we're trying to do here at Warrior 3, is that it's all about, creating strong gentlemen. And I think of a strong gentleman being able to go into any situation, sit down, have a glass of bourbon with somebody who's not walking with the Lord, meet them where they're at, but then have really strong conversation through that really relaxed environment, and then open the door for possibilities for that person to be able to experience the love of Christ, versus, well, I don't do any of those things, and those are wrong, and that, we're up here on this pedestal, and it's really it's a disheartening, way. And I would say, I had a conversation with a patient about this the other day. Jesus would basically have a conversation with anybody, but he would tell them the truth. And, it doesn't matter who they are or what they believe, gay, not, whatever. Like he was the most polarizing person on the planet, but at the same time, he had this amazing opportunity to connect and to meet people where they were at. So it's really, really good.
I think it's amazing. I think it's amazing what you can get away with when you really love people. I tell my team this all the time. I can say things to people in my office, and I can have fun and joke around about things, or to ask them questions that nobody else would ask them, whether it's about race or sexuality or whatever it is, if you really love people, you know what I mean? And so I think that obviously is what Christ was the full embodiment of, was he loved us more than, we can even imagine. So he could go into those places and he could win over the hearts and minds of people because they truly knew that he loved them deeply,
Yeah, it's so good. So good. I want to transition. I ask you guys, Ashley being, the first wife on the podcast, I kind of, tried to switch things up a little bit. And I texted Ashley and I was like, hey, what are Ryan's strengths? If there is an Achilles heel, what would it be? And then I texted Ryan. I was like, hey, what are Ashley's strengths and what are some of the, Achilles heels? Sam and I, the thing I love about Sam so much is she's not impressed by me. And what I mean by that is that, I feel like a lot of people sometimes are impressed by me, and whether it be athletically or whatever. And like, she loves me and she's proud of me, but like, it doesn't impress her. Like she's able to tell me how amazing I am, but then also, tell me that, hey, like you did, just watch this. And so God puts very, very, two very imperfect people together to sharpen one another. But, Ephesians 5:22 through 23 says, wives, submit to your husbands as to the Lord, for the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church, his body, and himself as Savior. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit in everything to their husbands. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of the water with the word, so that he might present the church to himself in splendor, without spot or wrinkle or any such thing, that she might be holy and without blemish. And so I say that scripture before I kind of go through some of the things that you guys said that you love about each other. And both of you guys talked about like how amazing your sex life was, and we don't need to talk about that but I just think it's important for people to understand that, before I go into this, like there's a submission, like there's a mutual submission that has to happen in order to have a healthy marriage, in order to have a healthy sex life, because without that, I mean, I talk to a lot of men, I talk to a lot of people that are like, we just don't have any intimacy. So, when I ask, so I want to read to you, Ryan, what Ashley said to me about you.
Let me get the Kleenex.
No, it's good. It's good. And I think it's important for me, I don't know, I'm a words of affirmation guy. So sometimes I need to hear these things because it does help me become a stronger man when I know that. I mean, I don't need to hear it because I should have confidence there, but it's always good to know that, just right on the drop of a hat, like our wives can say this about us. So he's deeply thoughtful and balances spirituality with real life and no judgment. He has a gentle approach to life. He doesn't try to control his outcomes. He hands it over to Jesus every day. He's a real man in every sense of the word. He's a gun-owning, knife-yielding, fix anything around the house person who isn't afraid of hard work or getting his hands dirty. He's the best storyteller I've ever heard. I'll second that. And he's the best. He's the best chiropractor I've ever had the pleasure of being adjusted by. Bedroom stuff I keep to myself, but believe me, it's really good. Ryan, what is your first response to to that?
Oh man, she can do that stuff and bring a tear to my eye like no other. I have to say though, professionally she was a speechwriter by trade, so she knows how to make it sound good. So I don't know that I am, I think she can make me sound better on paper than what I always feel.
It took her 5 seconds to respond. She didn't have a chance to go to edit or think about this. This was innately what came out of her heart. So,
well, one of her strengths is she knows how to really speak life into people. So
yeah, it's good stuff.
I appreciate those words.
It's all true, and it's so good. It's so good, Brandon. I think sometimes even doing that exercise, it just really gets you thinking about what are the words that I'm using? What am I using to myself? What am I using to my spouse? What am I using to my kids? I don't know. We talk about it all the time to our kids, where we're like, God created you with his words, and he created you his image, and your words also create. And like, I don't know, that life is so short. It's so fleeting. It's such a blip in the radar of eternity. And like, to think that we are going to control or own or take charge of, or like any of these things in life, except for just like sit back and experience, like, you know, like let God have it. He's doing it. He's doing the work, you know, and
Yeah,
we
and
just be in there and experiencing it.
I can speak firsthand to like Ashley. That really is a core value of hers, that she is adamant about making sure that the words she's choosing to use are life-giving. Like, she does that to me. She does that to our team. She does that for our children, like speaking life into them. That she is very quick to speak life into somebody, very quick to compliment, very quick to speak prophetic grace over them. She's very slow to criticize, very slow to, and so that's just a huge character trait that I really love and respect about her.
She's the perfect person to have on the podcast as a woman for the first time. So,
well, prophetic grace is such an interesting concept too, right? Because there's thank you for saying that, but honestly, there's a laundry list of flaws. So I don't want you to feel, but I think the concept of prophetic grace is so interesting to me, and I think it's something that I've only really like learned, and you know, and
I think the first time we ever heard it really was through Pastor Aaron Chambers.
Yeah.
Probably. And there's times where you think like my personality under stress, like I can go very black and white, where it's like, nope, it's this or it's this. And like, it's so funny because I have, Ryan can attest to this. It's really funny because I have a very laid back, chill, easygoing, fun personality, but then all of a sudden stress comes, and it's like, I'm just a different human being, right? Like, where it's, and Ryan's laughed about it before, where he's like, actually, we have a disagreement with each other, and you're like, call the marriage counselor, you know, like, yeah. Like I'm I just go so black and white with it. It's either right or it's wrong. And for me, the concept of prophetic grace, when I first was hearing it, where it's like, you're going to speak something over somebody that hasn't even happened yet. They're not even good at it yet. Like, why would you affirm that they, you know, like whatever this is, it's like, that's not right. That's incorrect. And it's like, no. That's just prophetic grace. Like, that's just like speaking over them. Like, I see this to come for you. Like this, like I tell my kids all the time, like, you know, who they're going to be. And why is it so easy to tell your kids who they're going to be and what they're going to become, but it's so hard to tell your spouse who they're going to be and what they're going to become? Like, why doesn't that flow off the tongue so easily? So I think really like working on that is like, that's been huge for me.
Yeah, no, it's super good. And, you know, Ryan, just, you know, I tried to pull like an Achilles heel from Ashley on like, what are some things that he, you know, and her response was like huge for me, and it kind of opened up my eyes to, you know, just communication. And she basically said, like, he may have a lot of things, and I know he goes through things, but it's not my responsibility to pull him down or to push him down and those kind of things. Like, he needs to wrestle with those through with God, and I'm here to support him in that process. And I think a lot of times, you know, especially, you know, just in my life, you know, I can always be, you know, there's a lot of different things that happen whenever you're chasing after the calling that God has in your life. Like, you know, the devil likes to throw spears. I mean, like David, I mean, you know, how many times did Saul try to take out David? There's just a ton of spears that get thrown at us. And, you know, we have to wrestle with that kind of stuff, you know, with the Lord. But, you know, it's not that our wife like lets us get away with anything, but at the same time, I'm here to support you in your struggle. It's like, no,
to be fair, she is the first person to let me know if there's truly an area where I need to clean up my act or take responsibility. But she would never say that in front of you. Like, our marriage is so valuable to her, and her place in my ear, of her ability to speak to me. I think part of it is, if she wants to have the authority to speak life and purpose into me, she knows that she has to use the other side of that, you know, blade very cautiously. Also, she's very good about doing it very privately and very respectfully. So, you know, it didn't surprise me that she would answer this question this way, because that's kind of the other half of her strength, is like, she knows that having the quiet place to be able to say it privately to me is also what gives her kind of my respect when she speaks life into me. I take that very seriously too.
Yeah,
Brandon, and I don't. Well, I don't want to cut you off at all, but this isn't like, my first inclination is to say, like, this isn't like one of those situations where like you're in a job interview and they're like, what's your greatest weakness? And you're like, oh, I work too hard, you know, like, and you're doing the tap dance, you know, kind of thing. Like, it's not one of those things. It's like, it's truly like, for me, and this doesn't have to be for everyone, everyone has to operate in their own relationships the way that they operate. For me personally, like, I have to let it go. And if I really, like, if I address something with Ryan and then I let it go and I give it up to God and then I bring it back up later, I haven't let it go. Like, you know, I'm still holding on to it. And like, there's this idea of like holding on to life loosely. Like, I'm not in control. I am not in charge. Like, I am going to take the steps that are in front of me and I'm going to do the next best thing that I know to do every single day. But like, the idea of like, when I grip too tight, that's when I start to feel anxious. That's when I start to feel overwhelmed. That's when I start to feel like I have to do all of this and it's me. And all of those things like add up to nothing for me. Right. So
yeah.
like,
And I don't think that's to say that you don't challenge me. Like, I think you challenge me and you are willing to say the thing and do frequently, but you do like speak your piece and then let it go. And then honestly, for me, because you don't keep nagging me or keep, you know, there's a level of like, I want to please you. And if you disagree with me on something, it really makes me go back to the drawing board and think about it a lot harder and bring it to God. And knowing that you are not hounding me about it, and I know that you're spending time in prayer over it or whatever, it just really convicts me much, much greater.
I think that this is kind of the last thing I'd say about it too, Brandon, is that I think that there's this like idea of like the level of control that we have like in a relationship or over our husbands. Like, and that is like I
relinquished that a long time ago.
Right. Like
you're like a wild horse. There's no control here.
Don't tell me what to do. Don't tell me what to do. No, I'm just kidding. No, but yes, it's exactly like my dad instilled this to me when I was very young, a very long time ago. And the only person that I have control over is myself. And I have full control over myself. And I will always honor those controls over myself. And my behavior is never predicated by your actions. I talk to my kids about that all the time, where like your actions are not based on someone else's behavior. And if his actions start like determining what my behavior is going to be, then I'm in a place that I don't want to be. Like I'm the dog chasing the tail, you know, but like that is not where I want to be. I want to be in a place where I have control over my actions and my emotions, and there might be a direction that I want him to go, but I'm not in control of him, and he's going to have to decide that. And we might have like, you know, conversations or discussions, and then we move on from it. But staying in a place where I'm like, you know, I want you to do this, or I want you to be this, or I want you to fix this all of the time, like it does nothing for us, and it makes life so much less enjoyable. So like, I'm trying to have a fun, good life here. Right. And it's so much better when he's in charge of himself and I'm in charge of myself. And then we come together really beautifully. And so for me, that kind of like manifests itself. Like when I'm in an ugly place, here's what his faults are. Like, and it's not just him, it would be anybody on planet Earth. And I think I kind of, you know, like brought that up to you. It's like, it would be easy for me under stress to get in this place where I become very self-preservational, and I'm like, here is everybody's faults and they're all out on the table so that I can make sure that I don't get hurt by them. And that's not a healthy place. And so like letting go of that has been a real journey for me.
You know, I think what I'm hearing, I think, you know, to kind of wrap up a statement would be, you guys take individual responsibility, but you have a mutual respect for one another in your marriage. So there's an individual responsibility within, you know, the husband with the wife to own their crap and to work to fix it. But then there's also a mutual respect for one another. And I think that's kind of what I'm hearing, which I love so much. But I do want to let you know, Ashley, like Ryan, you know, what he said about you was kind of what he's already said, but I just want to read it because I think you need to hear it. She loves relentlessly. She truly is always putting our marriage first. I know for a fact she prays for me through my weaknesses and prays for my strength. And I think the big thing about that is I know for a fact, he doesn't need to hear you say it. He doesn't need to see you doing it. But there's a mutual respect there that she puts our marriage first and she prays through my weaknesses. And so just, it's pretty awesome.
It's so good, Brandon. It's so good when you have that that does that.
So as we kind of wrap up here, I want to kind of go back to, this whole strong gentleman thing. And I would love to get your guys' thoughts on like what that means. Ryan, you said that to me the other day. I'd love, as Warrior 3 gets legs, I think of, what separates Warrior 3 maybe from just other companies out there that are, in men's, leadership or whatever it may be. But this concept of being a strong gentleman, what is a strong gentleman to you, Ryan?
Yeah, this is good. This is something that I took personally from just my love for like the Gladiator and 300, and I was brought up on like Robin Hood, the Kevin Costner Robin Hood, and I just have always loved the kind of the manly man warrior mentality. But then in the movies, so often those guys are also portrayed by people who are very charismatic. They were like my mom loved Kevin Costner Robin Hood, and she loved Tom Selleck in Quigley Down Under. Mm-hmm. And those were the quintessential like the man's man who was also like debonair and whatever. So maybe part of it was I grew up with that. But then I read a book called and I'm sure you probably heard of it, Raising a Modern Day Knight. Have you heard of that one?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so Raising a Modern Day Knight was shared with me by a pastor, and I read it, and just the idea that a knight is a squire first, and that they have this, list of achievements that they or landmarks in their life that they know that they're to achieve, and that there's always a creed, and the creed gives them definition to who they are. And I don't know, I was just really fascinated with that book. So I spent some time, and Ashley and I worked together, putting together really what we wanted our boys to be. So the Berlin boys are gentlemen. They're gentlemen champions, sons of the Most High God, and protectors of the Berlin women. So cool. At age 2, if you ask my boys at any given moment, what are Berlin boys? Starting age 2, when they could talk, they would say, gentlemen champions, sons of the Most High God, and protectors of the Berlin women. And what it did is it made speaking into them for me very easy, and it made correcting them easier, because we brought everything back to one of those 4 statements. So if they were, mistreating each other, it's like, is that how a gentleman behaves? No. Is that how a son of God behaves? No. If they were, upset that we played a game and they didn't win, is that how a champion behaves? No. And so it just brought some really easy things back to correct them to, that weren't just rules, they were statements about who they were. Yeah. So when they were acting outside of that, not in accordance with that, we could remind them of who they were. And when they were acting in accordance with it, we could, really praise them for, for showing that side of their character. That being said, the gentleman part of it for me, I think is, because it's easy to say champion, or we could have said warrior or whatever, but I was recently reading somebody's thoughts on the word meekness. When God says the meek shall inherit the earth, that word does not mean like quiet or timidity by any stretch of the imagination. That the word, if you actually look up the lexicon from that, it's tied to the idea of a warrior who has a sword but it's sheathed. Yeah. That his sword is in its sheath, and he doesn't have to pull it, although he's mighty and could destroy someone with it. It's the idea that you've trained and you're stronger than the opponent, but you're going to use a different tactic instead of just your strength or your battle ability. It's the idea that you're the strongest in the room, but also you're that you're kind and loving, and that people may be intimidated by you, but surprised by your likability, your humbleness, your good nature. And so when I talk about being a gentleman, we're talking about somebody who's strong and somebody. What does a gentleman look like? You know, does a gentleman dress the part? Does a gentleman, hold the door for not just his wife, but for does he lay down his life in sacrifice? I think even the other day we were practicing the act of washing each other's feet, and I was just very proud of all my kids for their desire to not just have their feet washed, but get down and wash each other's feet. That act of just selflessness. So again, it doesn't imply that we're weak or anything. It's actually that we're so strong that we're willing to, to not be recognized solely for our strength.
Yeah, meekness. I talk to the boys about this a lot. Meekness is power under control. It's controlled power. Because I'll talk to guys all the time, and when you think of the word meek, it's like, well, I don't want to be meek. I'm like, well, you got to look at what the definition of the word means. Being powerful but under control. Super good. This is what I read to my boys. I've been reading this to my boys, since they were young, just very similar to what you were saying, Ryan. And it's funny that, there are times when they come up and I'm, there's like they're WWE wrestling and fighting each other outside. And I'll hear someone say, was that, were you being a man of integrity and character? This is kind of this is what I read to them every night. You are men of integrity and character. You will love your Lord to God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your strength. You'll be a blessing to your mommy, your daddy, your teachers, your grandparents, and a blessing to your friends. You are the head, not the tail. You are above and not beneath. You are leaders and not followers. You are the temple of the Holy Spirit. You are men of valor. You have the whole armor of God so you can stand against the schemes of the devil. And you will bless the Lord at all times, and his praises shall continually come from your mouth. And my boys can recite that to me. It's something like, and when they leave the house and, I'm going to work and they're going somewhere, I kind of yell as they're, driving down the driveway. I'm like, who are we? And my 4-year-old will be like, we're men of integrity and character, So it's super good. And, we even thought about getting like a family crest, that goes above, our fireplace of like, who are we as Shriners? Like we are as Shriners, we are people of integrity and character.
Good.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
And what's so interesting, Brandon, is like, what a time to raise young men right now, like a time in the world and like what a time in life. And I think that, speaking from we have both sons and daughters, and from the female perspective, I think that currently what we're seeing, the undertones of like what scares me the most in our current society is that it seems like in order to do this thing where they're trying to empower women, they've done it by stomping their foot on men.
Oh yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Stronger women, weaker men,
Yeah,
exactly. And I think it was a few years ago, but there was a Disney movie that came out and I took the kids to, and I left and we left the theater and the kids knew. I was furious when we were walking out, and it was like one of those, it was this guy, Wreck-It Ralph in the arcade or whatever. And then at the end of the movie, he needs rescuing, and these princesses come in and rescue him. Okay, interesting premise. But instead of just rescuing him, they put him in a dress and they laugh at him, and they do this whole they did this whole thing. And I literally walked out of the movie theater and I was like, do you guys understand how wrong that is? I'm like, it's not wrong if a female could save a man. Yeah. But what it is wrong is that there, under no circumstances does anyone ever have to disempower someone else to empower themselves.
Oh, wow,
and if you're doing it right, you're doing it wrong. Right. And so just this idea of raising a strong gentleman does not mean you're raising weak women, and raising a strong woman doesn't mean that you have to, do all these things to be awful to a man. We can, that's by definition, the idea of a power couple is a powerful woman and a powerful man coming together. And
that transcends sex too. That was Abraham Lincoln's quote, which was, "You do not make us men strong by making strong men weak."
Right. Exactly.
Just people in general. I love that Ashley fights for roles too. This whole idea of women becoming stronger by becoming more like men in their roles. What it means is we're actually and listen, I think there's so many different ways to do it, but at the same time, women were created for a purpose, and that implies that you believe in creation. Women were created for a purpose. Man was created for a purpose. there's a reason why men have, on average 20% more muscle mass, more testosterone, more certain things. There's a reason why women have, breast tissue and men don't. There are reasons for these things, and it doesn't mean they can't be strong outside of that. But I just think in a Christian household, we have to recognize the design, and we're raising kids in a world. So I think to get back to the point of this is that our job is to fight for our kids understanding the way God created a man and woman. And if we don't raise our kids into manhood and our daughters into womanhood properly, the world is going to. And the way they're doing it right now, it's disastrous.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No.
That might have been a left hand. You don't want to take.
No, it's great.
Here we are.
No, it's good. It's that's why this podcast was created. It's about truth, and the whole concept of strong is that you can live and you can lead and you can love, but you can do it in a way that's not strong, just to gain followers, to gain likes. But raising godly men and women strong is there's right and there's wrong, and either what I mean. So I value you guys for that. That's why I have you on the podcast. I don't have just anybody on the podcast, and so I really appreciate you guys and your hearts. And that's going to wrap up the show. But I just want to personally thank you guys for just being an awesome example, for other couples to follow, for parents. Ashley, I thank you for being a strong woman, and an example, for what if there's a man out there who's just actively seeking, and this is what a strong woman is like. These are the values and these are the things that you need to be looking for. And so Ryan, just other men, they need to know what it's like to be a strong dad, to be a strong husband, to be somebody who's principled, who can carry a gun, but yet still have a loving conversation with somebody who doesn't think the way that they think. That's what it means to be a strong gentleman. So that's going to wrap up today's show. I pray that today's episode blesses you and you use it to live, lead, and love stronger today. Be blessed, fellas.
Wow, be blessed indeed. And how could you not be blessed by that amazing testimony about the richness in Ashley and Ryan's marriage? And look, if you're envious, if you're sitting there at home and you're saying, well, that's not what my marriage is, well, what are you going to do about it? A marriage is like a retirement account. If you don't invest, you're not going to get anything out of it. And remember how excited you were, guys, about your spouse when you first started dating her. You're never supposed to stop dating your spouse, okay? I know we can all get into a malaise from time to time, but just the words of Jesus in John 10:10, the thief comes not but for to steal and to kill and to destroy, but I come that you might have life and that you might have it more abundantly. Your marriages are supposed to be amazing, the kind of marriage that Ryan and Ashley talked about. If they're not, you got to dig down in, you got to do the hard work, you got to invest in your spouse, and you got to remind her, and maybe you too, what drew you together. If you need a little bit extra, a little oomph to get into that, if you want to get stronger, go to the warrior3project.com, warrior3project.com, and subscribe, become a part of this amazing brotherhood of men. Also, don't forget to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube for more amazing content. I'm Bruce Hooley. Until next time, we pray that you live, lead, and love stronger today.